Good evening. On behalf of Executive Access, I take great pleasure in welcoming you all to today's webinar. My name is Aparna Rajgopalan. I'm an engagement manager with Executive Access Industrial Practice, and I'll be your host this evening. It's a matter of great pride for us that Executive Access has completed 25 years in the industry this year, and we have successfully placed over 2,400 senior executives across various sectors in some of the most coveted roles in the country. Executive Access is the only search firm in the industry which factors in performance as part of our fee and with a candidate success rate of 95%. This has been a year where COVID-19 has created a big dent in the global economy. As we look into the future, organizations and people have to be more focused, nimble-footed, become performance-driven, and have to transform to be relevant and grow in these challenging times. In today's webinar, the panelists will address some of these challenges and how companies prepare, adapt, and evolve beyond this crisis. Now, I take delight to introduce our esteemed panelists. Our first panelist is Mr. Adnan Ahmed, and he is the Regional President for India and is also the Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Clarion Chemicals. With over 35 years of experience, he's worked with leading companies such as BP, Castrol, and ICI before Clarion. Adnan brings with him a strong track record of business leadership and performance delivery in complex global organizations. Welcome, Adnan. Our next panelist is Mr. Ajay Sambrani, and he is the Managing Director, Asia Pacific, MENA region, and member of Group Executive Management at Tubacex. With more than 29 years of experience, he has previously worked with Sandvik, ABB, and GEC Alstom. Ajay is a renowned turnaround specialist and an experienced leader in various multinational organizations. Welcome, Ajay. Our next panelist is Mr. Girish Nadkarni, and he is a partner and co-head of private equity at Sembcorp India. He has more than 26 years of experience, of which 18 years was with various Tata Group companies, including Rallis India and Tata Chemicals. Welcome, Girish. Our fourth panelist is Mr. Vipul Tuli, and he is the Managing Director of Sembcorp Energy India Limited. With over 28 years of experience, he was a senior partner with McKinsey and helped build and led their Asian energy practice. Vipul has advised government institutions across Asia on issues of energy policy and regulation. Welcome, Vipul. Our moderators for this webinar are Mr. Ronesh Puri, Managing Director, Executive Access, who has over 25 years of experience and has placed over 600 candidates, including over 100 CEOs and board-level executives. Our next moderator is Mr. Venkat Rao, Managing Partner, Industrial Practice, who has over 25 years of experience, of which 14 years are in the executive search business, and has placed over 250 candidates at CEO and CXO levels and over 100 placements in the industrial sector. Now, I request Ronesh to kickstart the session. Welcome, all of you.
It's a pleasure and honor to be amongst all of you. A very warm welcome to our four panelists. We have some of the best brains in the industry before you. Participants, this is going to be a very interactive session. So don't be afraid of asking any questions. Ask questions that you are afraid to ask. Ask questions that you are not afraid to ask. I promise you, all the four gentlemen before me are sportsmen. They love sports, and they will be more than happy to answer any questions. We will prick their brains in terms of what they see happening, what is likely to change, what are some of the challenges. We will also like to peep into their brains and find out what really truly makes them so successful. I'm sure all of you who are listening in want to hear about their trade secrets. And believe me, they promise to share them. So please kickstart this session with Adnan. Adnan, incidentally, is a sportsman, comes from a family of freedom fighters, done a lot for the country, and therefore, Adnan, when we look at this question of transform to perform, in your experience, what would your advice be to business leaders as well as CXOs? In these difficult times, in these unpredictable times, what do you think they should keep in mind to really achieve their potential and their objectives?
So that's a loaded question, Ronish. And maybe I'll throw in a controversy here and say that, maybe transform is a bit of a heavy word to use right now. So right now, when you're in a state of flux, when you're seeing things where, there is so much that you don't know, I'm not sure this is the time that you should start thinking about transforming. So the word I would use is adapt. So this is the time for us to adapt, because in the midst of this great unknown that we're all living through right now, if we start looking at transforming and changing ourselves, I worry that you will lead to chaos, because you don't have the luxury of predictability. But adaptability is all about seeing the reality around us. You've heard this word, which I love, which they talk about, the new normal. I think it's a very nice way of putting it, because what is now normal till now would have been something completely abnormal. And what we have to do is get used to that new normal and sort of imbibe it and allow it to be a part of us right now. So I'm just going to leave you with one small anecdote here, saying that companies which are very strong in their basics, and I think that's the key thing you should focus on, your basics. Companies that are really strong in their basics will get hit much harder when this chaos comes at you, because they're so used to running in a very predictable kind of a way, right? They're really organized. Companies that are not very strong on their basics, they have a lot of fat, a lot of wastage, they kind of, sort of find their way through this crisis. But when you come out of the crisis, the ones with the strong fundamentals will come out much stronger, and they'll come out much quicker. The companies that don't have very strong fundamentals and very strong basics will struggle. And when I say basics, it's talking about understanding your product, understanding your offering, being clear about your margins, what your brand value gives you, understanding your customers. If you're really strong there, through your excellence in operations and so on, you bounce back really quickly. So in a nutshell, what I am saying is, I think we should really try and adapt, see what we need to adapt, carry our employees with us, listen to what they're going through, and largely look at, over and above adapting, look at how strong our fundamentals are. That's what we need to strengthen through this period so that we can come out much stronger. Does that answer you, Ranish?
Yes, thank you very much. And what has worked for you the last 4 months? I'm sure it's a very challenging environment. You've tried a variety of stuff. Some takeaways that you think has worked for you?
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is not to let go of the fundamentals that we've been focusing on. So, we had this thing about looking at value add and looking at our margins. So we're not going to give up on that. So it's really important to make sure that you don't get tempted to throw away margins. So that's one. The second thing, from a leadership perspective, which all of us probably face, is staying connected with your employees. So you'll have, maybe hundreds of employees working from home, which is never done before. And this is the time for us to really reach out to them. And I've reached out to probably more than I've done when I was going to office, having calls, one-to-ones, talking to them in their homes with their children running around, spouses, in-laws, whatever have you, and having conversations just to get to know each other and to empathize and listen. Because everybody is going, Mumbai, we have small homes, we have lots of people in our houses, and we're working from home. Somebody's finding a stairwell to sit in and take a confidential call, or, they're doing all kinds of things. Absolutely heroic. I think our employees have been absolutely outstanding, appreciating them and, just getting to know them better. It's been something that's been very rewarding for me as well.
Wonderful. Ajay, to you, how much of your world changed? And how much has Ajay changed in the last 4 months?
Well, Tubacex is one of the market leaders for tubular solutions for energy segment, and substantial business. We are quite exposed to oil and gas industry. And you have seen oil and gas has, from 2018, has seen a lot of transformation. And this industry, after 2018, collapsed from all-time high of 120 coming down to $40 a barrel. The industry started to adopt changes and adopting cost measures, productivity, adopting technology. And oil and gas is one sector which has never been going through this kind of transformation or adaptability. Already this was happening, and the whole value chain was going through this change. And with this pandemic, the oil and gas, you have seen how it has behaved. And it clearly brought a number of questions on this industry, namely profitability and sustainability. So there are a number of key drivers. One side, the energy demand is growing. The landscape of energy source is fast changing. We have new source of energy, and which oil and gas has been there. So for a company like us, was a very quick adaptability. So it was very important to adapt with these changes, and already we were moving in that direction. I think the key for us was, it was very clear we need a new operating model for a corporation to move forward. And I think this was very clear writing on our walls. Secondly, I think most of the companies are focusing on products and services. It was very clear we need more wide products, more services. It was very clear for us. And I think more important was a flexible cost structures. And that's where the organization, especially we are focusing, is how to really start moving that. And I fully agree with that. Now, in this last 4 or 5 months, we really understood what is human connect. A loss of human connect was so important, and we started thinking how we could engage with employees, how with different stakeholders. And I personally felt it was fun, one very nice informal way to connect employees. At the same time, a lot of bright ideas came on the table. I think engagement with employees was very, very key for us. And I think these are the key drivers for us. And of course, everyone knows technology, adaptation, and all that. But the key was how to manage this kind of disruption. Especially the new generation has not seen this kind of black swan of people. And to come with this kind of change was very, very important. So for last 4 months, it was a lot of learning for me personally. I mean, one, it was a time to pause and think, and to be very patient and put on your thinking cap. Two, to have a different strategy to engage with people. It was very critical, and to hold on to your core and keep business continuity up. This was key for our standpoint.
And what has been the biggest shocker for you?
Well, the shocker was the business continued. And in the first few weeks, we saw real disruptions. Everything went haywire. But very quickly, everyone started to come back. The customers started to come back. Employees started to respond. The business started to really gallop. You know, though we had a lot of technical factories, very disrupted. But I can really compliment our team, the managers, the workforce. They really, in these times, they stood up and they came out. And I was amazed with the speed the whole thing has started to come back. So we see a lot of disruptions, but we still could see the inertia in the organization that has come forward in a very short time.
Thank you. Vipul, you've been a management consultant and now obviously a CEO of a company. I mean, what really has been the biggest challenge that you have faced, and what are a couple of the takeaways from this crisis?
You know, the way I look at it, Ranesh, first of all, thanks for inviting me, and thanks to the audience who are devoting their Friday evening listening to us. I hope you'll find it useful, and I'm certainly learning a lot already from listening to the speakers. You know, the way I look at it, or I look at, if I had to reflect on the last 4 or 5 months, it reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You remember that triangle that pyramid that we all learned back in school or college or wherever we did psychology courses? What companies and institutions are going through, at least I can certainly speak for ourselves, is we've gone through that. We were chugging along quite fine, and suddenly we've gone through that whole pyramid. In other words, very quickly, the first instinct was safety and security. Are my people safe? I mean, Sembcorp is, we have about 30,000 crores invested in India, and we run about 35 power plants around the country. So it's an essential service. The plants have to run. If you've got to get through this crisis as a country, the plants have got to run. So first is, my people have to be at the plants. Are they safe? How are shift patterns changing? What isolation procedures are there? If the control room gets infected, how do you get people out of there without getting contaminated, etc., etc., etc.? How do you make sure the projects can, wherever there's construction going on, that works or that gets deferred or whatever? Very quickly from there, once that was sorted out, it moves to survival. Survival of the organization, which is, we're in the power sector. There's no secret that there's a huge liquidity problem from the point of view of the discoms and cash flows and all that. So very quickly it became about cash flows. Fortunately, we got a very patient hearing and a very sensible set of policymakers in the power sector who went in and said, okay, there is a liquidity problem. Let's really try and solve that problem. So a lot of liquidity got injected into the sector. And in fact, that liquidity problem has started to ease. For us, it's eased. For other participants in the industry, it may be starting to ease now. Once that is sorted out, it comes to the next level, which is profitability. So we were fortunate, probably more than many other industries, where demand is essentially held up. We are within 5-10% of last year's demand and so on. So it really, now we are back to looking at where is profitability, where can we actually restore back to the levels we were hoping to be at. We may not get the profit growth we were looking for, but at least can we hold place. And while we're looking at profitability, we're now looking at the next layer of the pyramid, which is growth. So, okay, where can growth come from? What will be the new business models, etc. So in a sense, it's been a kind of roller coaster ride through that. Biggest takeaways for me is really around what does it take for an organization or an organization team to come together. I'll tell you, if I had to say one biggest takeaway, I would say, the way our team has performed. This could have been an opportunity or a excuse for sort of getting into disarray. But in fact, if I look at our renewables business, for instance, we've got about 1,000 wind turbines scattered around the country, from the borders to the, hillsides to forests to, the deserts and so on. And each one of those 24/7 has to run. So when a cyclone shows up, sites get flooded or sites get disrupted and so on. The teamwork that we've seen by the team, first of all our online systems have been taken home. So people, what they used to do in big control rooms in the office, they're now doing on their laptops at home with the cybersecurity and so on. But the way they have come together, the passion which says turbine number 722 is down due to a disruption. People are tracking in the minutes. And I can see the WhatsApps going between the corporate team, between the land team, between the regulatory team, between the operations team. Jeeps are being mobilized. This is happening, that is happening. And in minutes, people are saying, okay, it's back. And frankly, I think the takeaway for me was that this level of teamwork was something beyond what, frankly, I would have aspired to before the lockdown. So that's just been a big takeaway. Similar thing on thermal. Right now, we have 1,000 extra people in our plant doing a capital overhaul. And just to manage the logistics of 1,000 people coming in from different parts of the country, specialists, all of them, someone on a turbine blade, someone on a generator, or whatever. But to manage them, to do it, and to do it without any complaining, etc. I think these guys are the sort of the unsung warriors. Fortunately, as a country, we are giving a lot of appreciation for our healthcare workers and so on. But these other essential service workers who are just out there day and night. That's really my takeaway, what the human spirit can do.
Thank you very much, Vipul. Girish, how much has the PE world changed? And is it opportunity PE with the crisis?
Yes, PE word is changing, and there's also a lot of opportunity, because PE word would not like to get any crisis west. So, there are the funds which look at special opportunities. They call nicely special opportunities, which is an opportunity to invest at lower valuation and making more money. Having said that, like this is a global challenge, right? It's a health as well as economic issue, and it is affecting the world. Private equity globally is a $1 trillion industry, and in India, it is a very nascent industry. Just we invest around 30 billion in a year, and there are exits of around 25-30 billion. So give and take $50 billion industry. Uh, Over a period of last 20 years, there's some disturbance. Is it okay?
Yeah, a
So
little louder, Girish, if you would mind.
okay. So over a period of last 20 years, India would have received close to $200 billion of private equity investments, and it has created a huge change in the mindset of the people. Most of the people in India want to be entrepreneur rather than an employee, and this is a huge change. And it has created a set of parameters where we are seeing the tax, the revenues and quality of the revenues by the PE-backed companies is better. It is, the tax collection is better, employment generation is huge. Now what COVID has done suddenly is that, the lot of money in India comes from overseas. This comes from institutional investors, or this comes from endowment fund. And they look at India because India is one of the fastest growing economy in the world. And we have been growing very fast for last, almost 2 decades. But first time over after 1980s, we probably this year end up with something, a growth of -5, -7, something like that, right? Also the risk of downgrade in the industry, and that has a lot of implication for private equity. One, on the fund rate side, so the fund rates being, there's a risk averseness, and what is happening in India, and the India is actually racing its number 3 position and trying to take over UK soon in terms of COVID patients. So obviously people will be wait and watch. They don't want to immediately invest into India, and it is a little bit of setback in terms of fundraise. The fundraise in India in a year is not more than $5 billion. Keeping that in mind, no, it could be a setback. The second thing, on the investments already done, India doesn't have great track record of exits, and within that, in current situation, a lot of strategic discussions are on hold. IPOs are on hold. Most of the funds which wanted to buy, they want to wait. Their global ICs are telling, just hold on, guys, just see what's happening, and then we'll invest maybe in October, November, and not now. This is a situation, and however, there's an opportunity, as I mentioned earlier. We are in a position to engage with the companies who are stuck for funds, whose IPO is not happening, or where we can pitch in, we can command our own entry valuation, we can have terms which are more favorable for us, and that is good for companies. It's a win-win for both as well companies. Some of our portfolio companies, we mainly invest into financial services, healthcare, consumer. We are seeing how these companies are adopting. Particularly, I'll give an example of one of the agri company, which is a tech platform, which is for buying and selling of agri commodities. In light of the COVID, government announced a lot of agri reforms. This company helps farmers to sell on the platform. Of turnover. In the month of May, it did 800 crores of turnover, and this quarter they ended with 6,000 crores turnover, and this is a phenomenal. This is higher than last many years of their cumulative turnover. So they have adapted themselves, used the opportunity. They took the risk of being in the market when the COVID was there. Hats off to these guys. Another company, milk company. Earlier the milk was a problem, but in the COVID situation, milk was available in plenty, but there was no product offtake. So what do we do? Milk is a perishable commodity. So tactically we thought, let's convert, milk, which is available now at much lower price, and eventually the products like cheese, paneer, all those whey proteins, etc. They are sold over a period of time. They have their own curing period. The demand will come back by December. So that time you keep on selling and make much more margin. And that was the adaptive strategy. A retail play where we have some exposure, we realize that most of the places, because of the COVID, shops are not open. Government doesn't allow the malls to be open. So we immediately got into and some sort of an app which would provide retail, and this company is in the fashion and value. So providing these commodities in the core command area, which could be around 5 kilometers, on an app. So you don't have to come to the store, we'll deliver at your doorsteps. And it got a very good response. So in a spice company which we invested, all the malls are closed, but Indian people love spices, right? So we created two different channels. One exporting, which is to Middle East and other places where a lot of Indian diaspora is there, and also created government supply chain as one of the channel. And this company grew by 40% this quarter. This was never thought about. This was a little out of box thinking. So there are opportunities. Of course, there are challenges. Not easy to do exits. Thanks to Vipul, we could, one of our portfolio companies from infra, we sold it to Sembcorp. But this type of large deals are not easy to come by. That would be a challenge.
I have a question from Mohit Balla from Economic Times. And the question is for you. The question is, will negative China sentiment weigh in India's favor when it comes to raising money for India dedicated funds?
The comparison, what we are seeing and which we have seen in the past, the money from China which kept coming was more from the someone like Alibaba or Tencent or Baidu, who are in the strategic nature. Close to, if I remember, close to $4 billion of capital has come into country, but mainly in the startups. Close to 100 startups have been backed up by them. So out of 30 unicorns in India, almost 18 are backed up by Chinese. The current situation is such that the Chinese investors, most of the money which comes into Indian funds, it comes from Europe, it comes from Southeast Asia, and some part comes from US and other countries. Having said that, Chinese there is not large Chinese investment have come in the fund. This is in the form of direct investments. But yes, the sentiment about India is better because of the supply chain disruption and Atmanirbhar and other initiatives of the government. There has been a lot of excitement about the people to invest into India. I feel large part of that investment in the short term is going to be more FDI, foreign direct investment, strategic investments in the sectors like electronics, in the pharma or the intermediaries, chemical sectors. But I'm not seeing the fund investments, large fund investments coming from China into India. But yes, India would be a preferred destination compared to what it used to be earlier as regards to China. Yes.
Thank you, Girish. Now I pass on the baton to my friend Venkat, and I'll join in later.
Yes. Ajay, you talked about cost structures. Now a lot of organizations would be focusing on optimizing costs for the next 6 to 18 months. What are the key areas where the organizations have to invest to make this as a reality?
Venkat, we are all in a deflationary cycle where demands are falling down, and due to which prices are under pressure. Profitability is definitely under pressure. That leads to bankruptcy, and the whole deflationary cycle comes in. Especially when you have a black swan like this, you are not prepared as an organization. And so I'm a strong believer that in these times, I think what we need to build is a more agile and flexible cost structure. I think it's very important. And natural in these times, every organization will look at cash, to hold on to your cash and to manage in a smart way. At the same time, I don't believe that we need to optimize, especially anything with customer-centric actions and continuity of our technology and innovation. I don't believe that we need to stop that. In fact, we need to more do that. In fact, we all talk about digital transformation. From my standpoint, broadly, any organization are in three parts: a customer front end of organization, a back office, and the operations, the manufacturing operations. I think we need to move much faster on manufacturing operation to adopt technology, automate your factories. I think that's the key. That will drive the productivity and definitely optimize our cost. back office is something for all organization. I think it's time for us to really review. I think we need to automate all our systems and reskill the back office. From my standpoint, this is an area to really look at. And the front end is engaging and is fast changing, and we need to continue to spend and continue to retrain our people. I think it's end of the day is the fixed cost leverage. So you need to manage your cost structure so flexible, we need to adapt. And today is no more a day where we have one single product and you service customers. You need to evolve different business models, scattering different products and solutions and services to customers, so which helps you to leverage the fixed costs. At the same time, I think we need to also keep continuing to do that. I think we all have been talking for many years, retraining, reskilling our workforce. The need of the hour is now. I think we need to really go focus to reskill our labor force, our workforce, to see how we can adopt technology and leverage cost. The last point I want to mention is all this world, the funding is key. I mean, the focus will come on the balance sheet. And today, a lack of liquidity and debt financing is under huge pressure. And I think we need to open up different options of funding and be very collaborative. And I think we need to really look how to reduce our cost of finance. And that's, I think, is very important. So my key word is flexible, agile cost systems.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you so much. I have a question to you, Adnan. The innovation is a very, very key word for across the industries, more so with the chemical as a sector. How organizations have to innovate and at the same time they need to be efficient. How do you balance these two, Adnan?
I think it's a very good question. Can you hear me clearly? Because I was losing some of it earlier.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Would you want me to repeat the question?
No. I heard you perfectly well. So, I would say that this whole time that we're going through and we're thinking about costs, absolutely we have to focus on costs and we have to pull back costs. And sometimes, the first thing to fall by the wayside is costs that are invested to give you returns in the longer term, like innovation, right? And that is absolutely something that one mustn't do. Absolutely what one mustn't do. So, in fact, you have to do the opposite. It is in times like this where you need to excite within the organization, the curiosity and the involvement in innovation. So, in Clariant, what we do is we have a competition that we run for innovation. It's called Spark Nova. And it has small groups of 2 or 3 people where they have to really come up with innovative ideas, things that nobody else has thought of before. And we've run that. We're running that right now. As everybody's sitting at home, we're spending a lot of time to run it successfully, even through this pandemic. And we have 66 entries from our employees on really good innovations and so on. So what I'm saying is actually this is the time you need to invest more, if anything, in innovation. Because as and when we come out of it, we have to look at how do you adapt yourself. When you come out, it's going to be fiercely competitive. Because to start with, demand is not going to pick up as rapidly as probably we were seeing it over the past few years. So it's going to come back a little bit more slowly. And more innovative companies with better offerings are always going to be more competitive. So right now, I would say that focus on innovation is important. The only thing in our offices that we've actually gone back to right now is our labs. We have nobody's going to office, everybody's working from home. The only thing we're working on like fiercely is our labs, because that is really the heart and soul for us. I mean, we are a specialty chemicals company, but even besides that, innovation is actually at the core of us. And just one thing, Venkat, when you talk about cost, think back a decade. We went through a crisis, 2008, 2009, right? We thought that was the end of the world. It was nothing compared to what we're seeing now. But having said that, when we saw that, a lot of people started shutting down capacities. The first thing was, I've got this excess capacity, close a plant here, close a plant there, and a lot of capacity went out of the world. And when demand started coming back, the capacity was short. People who hung on to their capacity actually gained big time. And people who'd gone really tight really got screwed at that time. And I've been a supply chain professional for a long time, and I saw very clearly that was something which I think some companies probably overstepped because they were looking at the short term. And as you were saying earlier, I think Ajay was mentioning about the balance sheet. Absolutely essential. Keep an eye on that. But that's the fundamentals of your company, of how you run your operations, not by selling away your silverware. So I think, we do need to be a bit careful. Now, I'm saying this even though we just sold a company, but that was a strategic sale. It wasn't a sale of desperation. We had announced it well before the pandemic. So I don't know, Venkat, does that answer your question?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adnan. Vipul, you talked about digital initiatives, the kind of initiatives what you have taken right from production till the distribution level. Digital in the industrial sector, what changes would you foresee in the coming years, Vipul?
Look, I think in the industrial sector, for many sectors, I think first we have to recognize that many of these sectors have a lot higher digital intensity than they are given credit for. So these are typically sectors, and this is digital, but also the overall use of automation, the overall use of technology through their core systems. I dare say whether you're a tubulars manufacturing company or a specialty chemical company or others, typically there's a lot less sort of publicity and noise about it. But if you look at the core content, if I come back to our own operations, for instance, just to give you a sense, I mentioned those 1,000 odd turbines earlier. Every single one of them, from every single part of the country, has real-time. Some have 100 tags, some have 300 tags of data coming into central servers real-time, all the time, right? And that data then gets used constantly for monitoring, for performance improvement, for maintenance interventions, for predictive maintenance, etc., etc., etc. So I think we have to start with the realization that the industrial sector typically is underappreciated or is not well known for its digital content, but in at least many segments, not all, many are truly in the prehistoric age, but in many segments, these are already very highly digital, very highly. What do we see going forward? Not unexpected. I think it's really what we see is a lot less tolerance for paper systems, a lot more insistence on saying, look, can this basically work offline? Can this be substituted? Can this system have a sort of a drop-in modular replacement that can just take the risk out of the system? So I think we're going to see that. Someone was asking me the other day about when are we going back to work to the offices from our homes. And while the plants are all running because they have no choice, they have to run, and they run with all their safety systems and so on. But from the offices, I must say, we are really hard pressed to figure out that as long as there is even some small risk of exposure or some small risk to our teams who use public transport or semi-public transport, the digital systems have taken over in such a way that we are very hard pressed to see a reason, let's take the risk and go back to office. That just doesn't exist today. So the world has changed in that sense. But I think that is actually linked to a broader link of a change in, I would say, risk tolerance. And risk tolerance has changed in the sense that I think all managements of all companies will want much more clarity on what risks are actually being taken in the business. Mm-hmm. Especially in a developing market like India, which is a high growth market and so on, it is very easy to say, those risks are there, but rising tide lifts all ships. It's only when the tide comes down when you realize who all are swimming without their trunks, right? So the tolerance for assuming that various risk events won't happen has become much lower. Yeah. And this move towards digital and this move towards is partly about risk, and of course it's also about efficiency. It's also about asset integrity and so on.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you so much. Girish, you talked about innovation, how companies have adopted during the crisis. What will be the innovative business models will emerge from this pandemic? Since you work across the sectors, be it healthcare, financial services, agri, and you work across the sectors. What are the new business models will emerge from this pandemic, Girish?
Sure. In fact, it's a good question, and I'm actually seeing one or two models which are already evolving. So, everybody uses phone, right? In this, we have various apps in this phone, and these apps are working on operating systems, and operating systems are in this mobile phone, and this mobile phone is connected with the telecom network, and behind that there is a telecom technology, someone like Qualcomm who provides the technology. And I've been in the telecom for a very long time in my earlier life. I have not seen a single example globally where person who is in the app has gone up to the technology, or person who's in the technology has gone up to the app. Like Qualcomm can never go into Facebook. That journey has never happened. And the Reliance Jio platform, when there was a lockdown, the only company which broke free by bringing this platform and creating these partners which are across this all stacks from app to this. It's a very innovative. I think this is a very innovative model, and particularly it has come in the time when the use of content, use of telecom, use of broadband is the maximum. I think they could not have been very more innovative than this. Of course, they must have thought about it for a long time. The other model which I'm saying, while people are now getting worried about what will happen to their life, and there's a huge, almost $100 billion opportunity for creating vaccine. And look at the Serum Institute, Poonawalla Group. They already spent $200 million. And what they have to hedge their bets, what they have done, they have their own candidates. They are also tied up with, Sarah Gilbert, Oxford University. They are also tied up with some other players. And whosoever brings the vaccine first, probably they will go with him for the production. And this is another innovative thing. The third thing which I'm seeing from the consumer perspective, which I'm seeing, in India, almost 70% of the people are non-vegetarian. And most of the people go to the unorganized market, to the markets where they buy fish, they buy chicken, or they go to butchers. Today, the huge change, if you see someone like Licious or someone like, there are other companies, Fresh to Home, all those companies are doing extremely well because people have adopted themselves and they realize the first important is the hygiene, and then the second important is convenience, and for which they're willing to pay price. The prices are much higher. It is not discounted model. People are willing to pay for the price, and these companies are growing leaps and bounds. Similar example is someone like Staples, Grofers, someone equivalent of Grofers or Big Basket. They are doing extremely well, and the more and more people now adopting digitization. And there's a survey which says 75% of the people who never use digital apps for buying anything, they are very happy with this. And it also would mean, that you'll require a lot of people to be reskilled, and those people would be required for digital marketing, for e-commerce. The sort of people are not available. So there'll be huge change and will happen in this, and that will lead to the new models. In India, compared to China, India opened up the market for international like Facebook, WhatsApp to open up the market. China did not do that. China came up with their own apps for the whole market. Now there is a good chance that India also can come up with the own models which can take care of the local requirement.
Talking about, sorry, I wanted to jump in there for a second. Talking about new models, we have a lot of dealing with government agencies, right, across the country, state government, central government, and so on. One of the new models we are seeing right there is the willingness to interact over video conference, right? And I can tell you, it has changed the game. not only does it save enormous, sometimes days of travel time back and forth, meetings start on time, end on time, and the willingness to say, okay, let's meet, great, let's get the relevant three people, get it together, sort it out. So that itself, and you know, if this can happen in one of the most traditional sort of parts of society, which is always the government, that you can imagine what must be happening in Girish's portfolio companies.
Very true.
Thank you so much, and over to you, Ronesh.
Thank you very much. I think now we'll get down to a little bit of audience questions that have been flowing in and out. And the question that's coming for you, Adnan, from Sanjay Mishra. His question is that a lot of sourcing for the chemical industry is coming in from China. Within China, negative sentiment. I mean, what really is happening in this industry, and are you looking at replacement from India? And if so, how much is it going to impact on the cost structure? Is it going to be negligible or very heavy? And how do you see this panning out in the coming year or two? Adnan, you're on mute.
Yes, I am. Thank you. I think it's a very good question, simply because, you know, China is such an integral part of the chemical industry globally. They would be supplying about 40% of the world's chemicals. So you can't wish away China. It is there, and it is there to stay for some years to come. Having said that, for them to hang on to that 40% is a challenge. India is about 6%. So therein lies the opportunity. So not only do we have 6%, which is very small, but we have a very capable workforce. We've got a lot of chemists. We have very good education in the sciences in India. And you see a lot of entrepreneurs who've come out of college, chemists, and they've gone and set up industries and done exceedingly well over the last 20 or 30 years. The difficulty is there's been very little support coming in from the government, simply because for the government, the chemical industry was never a main focus. So there's been focus in services, there's been focus in telecom, there's focus in automotive. There's never really been a focus in the chemical industry. And maybe because, you know, the chemical industry is something, you know, it's interesting because nothing can work without the chemical industry, nothing. Anybody who says we are chemical free, let me ask him 2 or 3 questions and he'll start listing all the chemicals he uses, right? So there is nothing without chemicals. The food you eat, the air you breathe, the clothes you wear, the materials that you buy, everything has got chemicals. So it's the starting point. Right now, we import a lot from China. And overall, the size of the chemical industry in India is about $150 billion. It's going to grow to $300 billion in the next 3 to 5 years. Now, the thing is, unless there is some structural change in how the chemical industry operates in India, a lot of that growth is going to go to China. It's going to go in imports. So the good thing is that now the government is waking up to this and saying, look, we need to start manufacturing locally. We need support. So there's something called PCPIRs, which are, you know, they're supposed to be industrial zones, which are supposed to be set up. So this idea was created in 2007. And the chemical policy is still in draft form, 2007 draft, which is now a 2016 draft. And we're hoping to finalize that. And it gives you a plug-and-play kind of a place like Singapore has, where you come in with your technology. Our technology is the chemical technology. And everything else is provided locally, whether it's steam, whether it's logistics, whether it's roads, whether it's ports and supply chain and all that stuff. So it's a plug and play. And that's what we're really looking for the industry. So I guess the answer to your question is that, yes, there is opportunity for China to replace China. Yes, cost will be an issue because we will not be, I mean, it's so expensive for me to get my product to put it on a ship. Costs as much as it does to make it, you know. So that's because the infrastructure is not good, and you see it every day when you get out on the streets and you drive. So that's going to take a while for it to get improved. Having said that, it's improved significantly. Every 5 years, it's improving leaps and bounds. But we just can't compare with what China has in terms of infrastructure. So over a period of time, yes, the Indian chemical industry will grow. It will start to replace Chinese imports. but it's going to take a while. It will be a little bit slow. We still we have to be more responsible in terms of our management of the environment. I mean, in Clarion, for example, safety and environment and compliance are the top priorities, and we say it right out there. And that's not the case with the entire industry. Sometimes we need to be more responsible within the industry. I'm being honest to say that. And China saw that because they started struggling, and then they started closing down industries, and they did it overnight. So it was very damaging for the industry. We already saw a trickle down effect to India, and over the next 2 to 3 years, definitely we will see a growth in the chemical industry. So maybe for Girish, if you want to invest in companies, look at the chemical industry. It's a good industry. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will talk to you offline on this.
Yeah, right.
Well, to pick up from where Adnan has left Girish, what would be your 3 top picks when you invest? What industry would you bet on? 1, 2, and 3.
See, as I mentioned earlier, because of the digital adoption, something which is more in the nature of e-commerce, which did not take off in India in a big way, in a profitable way. It took off in a way where there was always a discounting of the product. I think we are seeing this time the people are willing to pay for convenience. So that sort of models will take off. The other thing is on the infrastructure, broadband, and other things which are connecting people, because the world is shrunk. People are confined to their homes. The only way of connecting is through internet, broadband, and So as a result, content and digital content, which could be various channels, they will do well. But it's a long haul. It's a long-term game. That should do well. That's what we think the current trend would support that.
Right. Can I just jump in, Ranesh, because I want
Please, Adnan.
I want to contradict my friend Girish.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So let me tell you that I think you're right that everybody's using more digital stuff and content, all that stuff you say is right, yeah. But when we look at wealth creation, you cannot create wealth with services alone. It has to have manufacturing. We've got 1 billion people. We have to take materials, convert them into finished products, add value, and trade. And I can see, there are examples like the United Kingdom, which was a manufacturing hub. And then it slowly lost that and moved slowly away to services and so on. And I think there was a tremendous loss of wealth for them, which got shifted various places. China was one of the biggest beneficiaries. The biggest success story for China is that it manufactures. That creates wealth. At the end of the day, you have to add value. For the nation, you have to manufacture. Having said that, your private equity, so I understand what you said is absolutely right. But the government has finally hit the nail on the head when they're telling us to be self-reliant. And you don't differentiate between multinational and Indian. What you differentiate between, I'm an Indian company, right? Maybe parent is in Switzerland, and we're a global company and so on. But in India, I'm an Indian company. My management is all Indian, labor is all Indian. We make in India. We have fantastic talent and everything in India. So that is going to create wealth for our nation. That is going to get us out of poverty and whatever you want, a 5 trillion economy, it's not going to come by services. We have to manufacture.
No, I don't.
Girish, you want to rebut?
No, I don't disagree with him. Only thing, what I would like to say that, really the global money finds its way where the cost of production is the lowest. So they can make more money. And the way infrastructure and, things which China created in past 20 years, as a result, it has become the manufacturing hub. India has the potential, but India would need to do few things. One, one is the infrastructure, huge infrastructure. You mentioned that you take more time and more cost for shipping your goods rather than the production of the goods. So that is one infrastructure investment. Number 2, reforms on labor and land. I think, that is 2 things that are very important. I hope this opportunity is used and those reforms happen faster and the investment happens faster. If that happens, I fully agree with you. I think Indian economy from services can definitely take also important position in manufacturing. But from private equity, we have limited time horizon. And as a result, we look at low-hanging fruits first.
Fully agree with you. Very good answer, Girish. Agree.
Vipul has been actually thinking and reflecting on this dialogue. And I'm sure he has an opinion on that.
No, so I do, as a matter of fact. I think just on this exchange, I I think
Little louder, Vipul, if you would mind.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Is this okay?
This is better.
Better. Okay. So no, I just wanted to say that I think both Adnan's and Girish's positions are right in their own way, in the sense that, you know, for a nation that is basically a continent the size of India, 1/5 of humanity, there's no development that can happen without manufacturing and without without agriculture, manufacturing, and services. But from there are different types of capital, and different types of capital are suited for different types of opportunities. And private equity may not be the best suited for every kind of opportunity. It's suited for certain kinds of opportunities. So in that sense, that is fine. But I just did want to say, about this whole how to make the most of the manufacturing opportunity that's staring us in the face. We have been trying to do it for a few years with I would say limited success so far. There's a new renewed commitment to say, okay, this time let's really make it work. Sembcorp has an interesting history. Most participants would have heard of Jurong Island, which is probably the biggest plug and play chemical and petrochemical zone of the type that Adnan was mentioning. And we were sort of one of the parties that was actually responsible for creating the heart of Jurong Island, which is those steam lines, that centralized water treatment, the centralized utility corridors, etc., etc. We actually own and run those. So in that sense, we've been quite instrumental. We also have industrial parks, for instance, very, very active manufacturing parks, for instance, in Vietnam, that we've worked collaboratively with the government there too. So from that experience, I think one thing is quite clear, that creating the ecosystem that is necessary to make this sort of manufacturing parks, whether process industries or discrete manufacturing, to make these successful is not easy. It is possible. Countries like Vietnam has done it, Singapore has done it, a few others have done it, but it is not easy. And I think realizing that what we are setting out to do is not easy is a first step that we must, that itself is the first step. To know what an ecosystem thinking means. If we go in and say we want to get, let's say, an electronics manufacturing cluster, what it takes to bring an ecosystem together, recognizing the extent of that challenge, recognizing what it means and who all needs to get attracted is the first step of the challenge, and we must take that step. Similarly, I would say the difference between bringing in an investment and making an investor successful over 10, 20, 30 years are two very different things. It's very easy to promise fiscal incentives or promise when we want to bring in someone. But every investor around the world will look at the investors who have already been there for 5, 10, 20 years and say, how was your experience? What happened? When you ran into problems, of course, everyone will run into problems. As you ran into problems, how did they get solved? So I think these two aspects, a mindset that says everything from sanctity of contracts to making the investors successful long-term, and the other one, which is creating the ecosystem, is absolutely central to our country succeeding in this whole, let's say, next phase of manufacturing.
Right. Thanks, Vipul. There's one question that has been coming, in fact, been asked 2-3 times, and it's for Ajay and Vipul, you. And there are 3 different people who asked the same question. Is the future of conventional thermal power looking bleak? Is it advantage renewables going forward?
Well, Vipul, you want to? Okay, I can take that first. As you know that India cannot stay without coal, and we will need the continuous reliance on coal energy. Having said, at the same time, there are a number of opportunities which the country is facing. And one of the key enablers where it can move is the government of India have started a new project which was 3 years back, ultra supercritical power plant. This is one of the technology which brings a very low emission, high efficiency, and also it can adapt with low coal caloric valley. And I think this is a game changer. No one in the world has brought this technology. And we as Tubacex have been associated with Government of India in developing this technology. And very close, the Government of India will launch this kind of technology in thermal business. Of course, we will see the coal energy source going down a bit, but we cannot live without that. I think the new technology which India is going to adopt, I think this will be a game changer.
Your perspective, Vipul?
Yeah, look. I think the future is renewables. I think there's no doubt about that in anyone's mind that renewables will grow quite fast. But until there is a affordable, meaning cost-effective method to store energy or to store electricity, you cannot do away with conventional power. So just to give you a sense, there's a lot of development going on the battery side, on other storage and so on. But there is nothing that is today cost effective or that is on the horizon of being cost effective. And don't mix up, like we were talking about private equity, which meets some needs, and then basic infrastructure financing that meets other needs. Don't mix up the two things. While there are some very successful battery technology and other storage technology initiatives around the world, and they've been much appreciated, and those are necessary to get the innovation going. But don't mix it up with what it takes to run a 200,000 megawatt grid, which is what the Indian grid is, going towards 300,000 megawatts. To have a backup for that sort of a grid on, let's say, a day like the last 3-4 days when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing, but you then need conventional power. There is no storage technology on the horizon today that can crack that. Now, if I was to go with what is known today, what we know today as human beings, that suggests that conventional power is not going anywhere for the next at least one more investment cycle, which may be 25, 30, 35 years. However, we have to also be humble and realize that we don't know what the bounds of human innovation are. Tomorrow, there could be a technology discontinuity that changes it completely. And if that technology discontinuity comes and you suddenly get cost-effective storage, then the game could change very quickly. Until then, remember, renewables will keep innovating, storage will keep innovating, but as Ajay very rightly said, conventional will keep innovating too. So I think we are looking at a balanced sort of world. And for now, I think a lot of the action and a lot of the sort of newer capital certainly is going towards renewables. And as a country, we have to do renewables. We have a balanced portfolio, but it's not just from a point of view of cleaner energy, which is important, but it's also important from the point of view of energy security. Because for India, the ability to harness natural resources.
A little louder, Vipul. A little louder.
Oh, okay. Just give me a moment. Is this any better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, thank you. Some headphone issues. No, so for a country like India, having that energy security where we are currently importing a very vast number, I think, what is it now? I don't know, Ajay, 70-80% of oil is imported as of today. But to get away from that import dependence, renewables helps that in a big way as well.
Thanks a lot, Vipul.
So, Ronesh, can I just add one thing there? Vipul, it's very interesting to hear you, both Ajay and yourself. And of course, my information is a bit dated, having worked in BP for a long time, but that was before 3 years ago. What we have right now in Clariant is a technology that takes, stubble from farmland and converts it into alcohol. And the government is encouraging us it's called 2G ethanol. So it's the second generation. It's not competing with a food source. And you can dilute 20% of your fuel, which you use for transport and so on. And that's a really interesting technology. It's something that we are bringing into India. We're talking to a partner to bring it in here. But it solves two problems. One is this thing about burning your stubble in the farms, and you're converting that into energy. So you get about 3 times the value when you convert it into ethanol versus putting it into a boiler and converting it into steam or power or whatever. So I think there's a hybrid. There's so many different opportunities that one has to look at, and there is no one single solution that's going to come.
Absolutely.
I think fossil fuels are here to stay. They're not going anywhere for another 30, 40 years. Maybe after that it will go, but 30, 40 years, I don't think it's going anywhere, because the hunger for energy is only going to increase. As India develops more and more, we still have a huge amount of people who don't have access to energy. So that's only going to increase. So, I think fossil fuels are here for a while to come. And I agree with Ajay. So coal is here to stay right now.
Right. A question for you, Adnan. One of the panelists, one of the participants wants to know what organizations can do to help employees transform to perform.
An organization creates a culture, and that culture has to be one which it tells you what is expected, what is okay, and what is not okay. And when you have a company that are focused on performance, you have to create a culture where people who come in to work, they recognize that performance is something that's non-negotiable, and it has to be something that is fair. Not exploitative. It's got to be fair, and it's got to be something that's engaging and makes it, enjoyable and challenging, and sort of, firstly you attract the right kind of people, and then you give them the kind of environment and situation for them to really outperform themselves. It's a big leadership question as well, and also about creating a culture. And just to share with you some of the things for myself in my many years of working, what really motivates me. First thing is, a company, especially in manufacturing and so on, a company that really focuses on safety is one that is very motivating for me, because it tells me that the organization is worried about my health and my safety. And somebody was talking about that right now through this pandemic. If companies are pushing you to go back into office because they just want to get their productivity back, that's not very motivating, right? So, but when we as a leadership are standing there and saying, no, we're not going to let anybody go in there till I'm comfortable to send my children to that office, that's really very motivating. And when you can get people really motivated and committed, I think that helps them really transform to perform. But you also have an ecosystem to allow them to perform. You've got to have a scoreboard. Like in a one-day cricket match, if you don't know what the score is, there's no way you can hit your target, right? So you've got to have a score, so you've got to have a good ERP system. You've got to have good performance management systems, things that are reliable, and you've got to be fair. So I'm not saying give soft targets. Targets can be stretched, but there's got to be something behind it. So I think there's a lot of things there. There's got to be respect in the organization. I have to respect every single employee in my organization, and not just say, this is for the senior managers and this is a different rule book for everybody else. So there's got to be, compliance has to be a real important thing. So we've got 4 priorities which we drive very hard. Number 1 is safety, and safety is measured through input measures, not output, not how many people you hurt and you killed and all that, because it's too late, right? So it's all focusing on input measures, right? The second one is on compliance, and compliance really talks about a speak up culture and respecting each other. And if somebody is disrespectful, it's unacceptable. So I can push you really hard on performance, and I can, but I can't be abusive, and doesn't matter who you are, right? So respect and so on. So compliance, regulatory compliance, all that, number 2. Now, the people priority, and this is how, when you're doing any business, you look at these priorities in that order, right? So if something is violating you on safety, you're not going to do it. If it's okay on safety, violating you on compliance, you're not going to do it. Okay on safety and compliance, violating your people principles, you're not going to do it. And the 4th priority is customer. So customer is not important because it's a priority, but it's the 4th priority, right? So all these 4 are really, really important priorities, but in that order. So then it becomes very clear when somebody comes to me and say, my customer is waiting, so I've got to do a rush order, and I'm going to tell the driver to drive really fast to get there. No, I don't want that business. That's not what we want, right? So it's very, very, very clear. So I would just say that, when the organization knows that there's a culture which they are aligned with, if there's a value system you're aligned with, and of course, then, you've got to be uncompromising on delivery. You've got to have a good reward system. So you reward the right people who are really performing, and not your best friend. So I think there's a number of things. It's a culture that you have to create. It's not something you can do overnight. Over a period of time, you create a culture.
Wonderful advice, Adnan. Thank you very much. Over to you, Venkat.
So the generic question for everybody, I think I'm sure one of you can take up. There's one question which came from Veera from Head of HR, ITC ILTD division. Given the context, how to balance the economy at macro level and ensuring the operations at micro level? In doing so, what are the responsibilities of state, employer, and employees? I'm sure one of you can take it up.
Can you repeat one more time?
Henrik, okay, yeah, I'll repeat.
How you manage?
Yeah. So what it says, given the context, how to balance the economy at macro and micro level, and ensuring operations at a micro level. In doing so, what are the responsibilities of state, employer, and employees?
Okay, I can take it.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you. All corporation, we all go through this long-term strategy work, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And when something happens like this, your all strategy is out of box. And I think when we have so much of change in macro world, where economy, we don't know which side the sector macros are heading, I think the key word, I think it was Adnan who said, is first is to adapt. I think the most important for any corporation is to adapt the situation, what's happening in the macro. And if you go back to last two big events, the Depression and the World War II, always a new opportunity popped up. And if you go back to the history, we will have a new opportunity popping out. I think we need to manage both parts. One side, the macro has its own drivers, but I think more important from the micro standpoint, I think we need to find those opportunities. And I'm sure there are opportunities and we can see them, and it's something will evolve. So the companies, the corporations which are dynamic, agile, and putting up very quick systems, I think this is the key forward. I don't think going forward, any companies will look for long-term strategy path. A 1 to 2 year strategy is good enough at this point of time to bring some key drivers, enablers to align the organization to see how you manage both external and internal world.
Thank you so much. And Vipul, in one word answer I want, what in your opinion will change permanently?
Risk perception.
Sorry?
Risk perception.
Risk perception.
Risk perception.
How about you, Girish? One word answer.
I would agree with Vipul, risk perception till the vaccine is figured out.
Okay, thank you. And how about Adnan?
So for me, I would say one thing that will change permanently is geography, because distance is gone now. Vipul was talking about teleconferencing with government officials. We're talking about working from home. We're talking about no travel. It's just changed geography completely. We've hired somebody at a very senior position, and I've never met her. And she's come in, and she's she's now had her induction, and none of us have ever met her. So this is going to change forever. To know that the art of the possible is to work without geography.
Okay, thank you. How about Ajay?
I think which we'll see is flexibility. I think with all the changes around, we have seen how flexible and it keeps working. the organization will learn from flexibility. This is
And one more question, when do you see normalcy will return? What is your guesstimate?
That is not a fair question. That is not a fair question. You can
Come
choose
on, Adnan, you can't get away. You go to
choose choose any month, and I can either justify it or knock it.
Every industry has its own like normalcy, right? In your opinion, you're in a different sectors, power, energy, oil and gas, chemicals.
So I'm gonna hazard something. I've been reading the Gita right now, and I find it really fascinating because there's so many life examples, and there's this one part where it talks about this keen focus that Arjun has when he's looking at the eye, that he's the bullseye that he's looking at, and when Krishna is talking to him, and they measure this thing about focus and about just getting the context. So if you ask me, when are we going to come out? I keep thinking it depends on which lens I want. If I want this focus, then I want to know where, it's going to be 31st January 2021. But I'm not doing that. I think if you look at the greater context, what is of value to us is to look at it this way, to say that, we talked about a 5 trillion economy for our nation, and now that is obviously gone further out, right? So let's just take a step back and say we're 2.7 trillion. And we were going to look at first go to 3 trillion. So when am I going to hit 3 trillion? So I'm in 2021, and we're saying we're going to shrink. Then hopefully 2020 rather, 2021, I'm going to come back to where I was in 2019, maybe. I think that's a good aspiration to have 2021 look like 2019. And remember, 2019 wasn't a great year because we said 2020 we will come back. So I'm saying 2022 should be the aspiration for us to start having a good year and then build going out, right? So that is from a context point of view. Obviously, when we do our planning, you have to look at it more micro, but every month it's shifting up or down. But I think if you have a macro picture of what you're looking at, I think Ajay, you talked about a 2-year horizon, right? I think you would be very cavalier to go into 5 years and 10 years, but I think a 2-year, 3-year horizon is really good. Vipul, you're the consultant, the McKinsey guy. What do you think?
Thanks, McKinsey. I think it's a damn good question. Actually, depends on how you look at it. My view is, at some level, it's been normal for a while already. If you've been operating in a certain way for 4-5 months, isn't that already normal? So that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is, when does normalcy return? Never. Because some things have changed already and they'll continue to change. Whether you look at, I think Ajay was talking earlier about the way people will look at their balance sheets. I couldn't agree more. People are going to stop. I mean, unless you're very, very risk-taking, people are going to stop living on the edge as far as leverage is concerned. Right? Whether you look at personal resilience, people are looking much more closely at how leaders behave personally and maintain their own energy levels. If you look at risk perception that I mentioned earlier, very different world. You look at geography and the concept of it, very different. So at some level, we are back to normal. But if you mean when will demand pick back up, when will economic activities pick back up? Yes, 1 year, 2 years, something like that. But will it be normal in the way we had it last year or the year before that? I don't think so.
And since Adnan has touched this from Gita perspective, let me also address this from spiritual perspective, because the current things are not normal, because there's a panic in the minds of the people, and which is overweighing. People are sitting in the home, they don't want to venture out for various reasons. And there's a 2-liner prayer, if you are okay, I will just say that, which actually narrates this. It goes like that: God grant me the serenity to accept the things which I can't change, which is the current situation, right? And courage to change the things which I can, which are all the measures which you are taking, and wisdom to know the difference between what I can and what I can't. And that wisdom is very important. Once that wisdom comes back in our mind, that this is given, I can't change this, and this is something which I have to live with, I think the normalcy will come back in the minds, and that will come in the behavior and the business.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Ajay, there's a lot of, I think I'm sure you would have, even we participated in the story, the 200 executives were hired for the last, let's say, 3-4 months, for the last, let's say, April to June or whatever. How can new leaders, because there is a lot of, there's no contact, there's no connect. They all joined virtually, for the last 3-4 months. How can these new leaders build rapport, align their teams, and pick up on culture cues when onboarding virtually? What are your suggestions for these leaders, whoever got onboarded recently? How do they build this trust and the rapport with the teams, and virtually how can they build this trust and confidence or whatever, align their teams?
I think they are already doing now, and I'm sure many organizations employ coming on board. They're already on board and adapting with the new situations, and very quickly adapting to the organization. I think there are two things. One is culture sensitivitiness about the organization. So unless you're not in the organization, you're not around the people, you don't have the processes around, and you don't feel the culture, And this is a bit of challenge, you need that personal touch when you have the employee coming. Other is engaging the new employee into his or her work. I think that has moved quite fast. I mean, I have very senior people into organization who came on board. They have not seen their own team. They have not seen the people behind, and everything is a virtual wall behind. But still, operation has started, and they're very quick in adapting to this part. I think this is good, and I think this is quick learning, and we have no choice but to get into it. The other part, I think we have to do a bit of that, and what we're trying to do in Tubacex is our HR is taking extra support, extra steps to see how to bring the new employee on board in a good transition, trying to sensitize, connecting, having a lot of group meetings, this will help them to understand. And I felt personally, we had a number of senior employees joining us. We felt that they've quite come back very fast. Of course, they're missing customer connect and organization connect, but rest is moving. I think time is an answer.
Thank you. Vipul would like to add anything. I'm sure one of your friends joined during this pandemic as a CEO, but would you have any suggestions?
No, I think it's a real issue. I think the cues for culture and the cues will be different. The basics may not change. Is this a caring organization? Are my colleagues looking after me? Is it, how is performance demanded? What degree of respect is there, etc., etc. Those basics, I don't think change, but the cues, we'll just have to find a way. And honestly, if you ask me, I think most organizations are still figuring it out. Yes, we also do have a few senior people who joined. Some more are joining. Your question has actually made me think, how to make sure that they are getting the cues that we are the kind of company that the older people already know we are. So I noticed among the participants, our head of HR is on this. So Kalyan, let's have a chat about it.
Over to you, Ronesh. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Venkat. And we'll just move to a little lighter side before we wind up. Here. So Adnan, one piece of advice for all the participants, something that's worked for you and you think will work for them in this new world.
Yeah. So, I talked to you about the breaking down of geography. I think the one piece of advice would be to improve your listening skills. And yeah, or maybe there's another one as well. And that is, I've learned this from being at home for the last 4 months, is it's a time to focus on yourself as well. And most of us in corporate life forget about the self in some ways. I'm talking about your own health, your own, doing what you enjoy. You don't think about it, and before you know it, the year is over, and then you've got next year's goals, and then you get after them, and then the next year and the next year. So these 4 months has given us time. Sit back, put your thoughts together, do things that you like, and listen to yourself, listen to others. I guess that's it. Make the most, adapt.
Adapt. Wonderful. And your favorite cricketer, Adnan?
Rahul Dravid, by a long shot. He was born in the wrong time. Otherwise, he would have been the greatest.
I totally agree. Vipul, what is your advice to youngsters or even older folks like us?
I would say build your resilience. Build your resilience. What do I mean by that? And I was reflecting on this thanks to some questions that you guys had floated earlier, which were actually quite thought-provoking. When I say build resilience, I mean 3-4 things. I mean, number one, do something to keep your physical health up. Whatever it takes, whatever level you can do, whether you're an active sportsman or you just want to go for a walk or you just want to do whatever it is, right? Something on your physical health. Number two, I think find a way to protect your work-life balance, because your boundaries, in an intense work from home environment, boundaries will blur. Find a way more zealously to protect your boundaries, whether that means shutting off, whether that means getting a hobby, whether it means doing some meditation, whatever it is you do. But protect your boundaries more zealously. I think the third is, on the topic of Adnan and Girish mentioned spirituality and the Gita. I think there's something for me personally, at least, which I found very worth aiming for. I don't always manage to do it, but it's worth aiming for, is passionate detachment, which is, what the Gita in some way says, do your duty and don't worry about, remember you're all just kind of in the grander scheme of things, what modern psychologists called, be on the dance floor, but also be on the balcony to view what dance is going on. Some people call it passionate detachment, but be able to, do what you need to do, but also, especially as a leader in an organization, be able to step back in times like this more than others. And because otherwise you won't really be able to guide your people or to help them in the right way if you yourself are always on the dance floor. And fourth and finally, I would just say, increase our sensitivity levels individually. Can we be more sensitive? I don't mean be more prickly, no. I mean, be more sensitive to what others are going through. You don't know the other guy's struggle. Whether it's a medical struggle, whether it's a family member's issue, whether it's a space at home issue, whether it's something else. These are weird times. I think the most we can do to support each other at an individual level is let's try and be a little more sensitive to each other. I think these would be my 4 takes on resilience.
And your favorite sportsman, Vipul? You're mute.
I'm not really a sports wala. It's funny when I travel abroad, I'm like, everyone assumes because I'm Indian, I got to know a lot about cricket and so on, but I probably the Indian, only one of the few Indians who doesn't follow. Rather than a sport, I actually have picked up something like a sport, which is woodwork. It's a hobby, and thanks to my dear wife, she got me into this on my 50th birthday last January, and it's been a fabulous learning journey. I'm not very good yet, but the ability to say, get into something else, do work with your hands rather than working with the brain and the mouth all day, and it's almost like meditation. When you're out there planing something or figuring out the grain of a wood or sawing something, your entire focus is physical, which leaves your mind open, not very different from what a transcendental meditation does, to just allow thoughts to go through and clean out and so on. So,
thank you very much. Friends, Vipul is still learning and trying new things. So you know what you're seeing in front of you. Ajay, what is the secret of your success? What has worked for you?
Well, I think this last few months, I think I'm on same page as Adnan, We are all in the rushing world and everything is moving very fast around us. This last few months, I've really learned how to be patient. And I can tell you, one of the best ideas I'm getting now sitting at home. I never had this in the former times, but now in this few weeks or months, very nice ideas coming. So it's clear that that patience, you need those thinking mind and to pause and to think. I think it's an excellent pause for the whole world, I think, to really put your clear plans going forward. The second thing was, which Vipul mentioned, is sensitivity. I call it as empathy. I think it's very important. Now things are so dynamic and all of us have challenges on the table. It can be different challenges. How you manage the expectations of the stakeholders, whether at home or at the workplace. I think you need a special window being trying to be very sensitive. And I think this is something learning. Very key.
Thank you, Ajay. And any role model, somebody you revere?
Well, I've just started to follow. I'm in golf, and I'm a strong follower of Rory McIlroy. I really like his style, and I'm learning a few things and inspiration.
Thank you very much, Ajay. Girish.
Yeah, the silver lining in this was, spending time with the family. I'm sure everybody in their career race have, given less time to the family, at least in my case, I must say. And this was some sort of a silver line where you could spend a lot of time with your family, catch up with the moment which you missed. And I think it's some sort of a career sabbatical, one can look at, you can do this, which probably this time will never come back in your working career. So make most of it. That was one. The other thing I would want to talk about is about the market, stock market. This is a time when everybody should endeavor to preserve their wealth, whatever they are, because when the black swan event happens, nobody knows how it will pan out. And today, if you look at the state of the economy and the state of the markets, they are far apart. Main Street is far away from Wall Street, and this is a market where there will be a lot of volatility. So people should be very careful about about this.
But anything in terms of investing tip you would still give to people when there is normalcy? Something that's worked for you? Your secret mantra?
Invest only for long term. Don't invest for short term. That's it. Because long term everything works.
Wonderful, gentlemen. It's been a real pleasure to be interacting with all of you. And life is a marathon, as Girish really said, long term. Keep learning, as Vipul and Adnan and Ajay are doing. And I think we just need to keep a positive frame of mind. Things can only get better, and they will get better. I think we just need to keep our chin up and look at advice from the esteemed panelists. And we from Executive Access will endeavor to do more and more of webinars. The only reason is that we want to learn from them. And have a good night, have a great weekend, and thank you all of you. It's been a pleasure. Stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Venkat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, members.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Right. Thank you.